So we watched The Nice Guys, and we're going to be breaking down Ryan Gosling's performance in The Nice Guys. I have a bunch of notes, but if you have anything, like you're ready to talk about, we can just jump in and I'll like pepper in all the stuff I've got throughout.
Yeah, I mean, since you got notes, I think we should closely follow those. But I'll just start by saying that I think I know, I
Yeah.
know that this is my favorite comedic Ryan Gosling performance. His character, the way he plays his character is just, it's so out there. I mean, like when you think about like his lines themselves, like, okay, they're fine, they're funny, but his like delivery with like every single line or his mannerisms and like his body as he's talking is I think what really elevates this performance so much. A couple instances come to mind. One, when him and Russell Crowe are in the bathroom and he's struggling, just like physical comedy when he's like trying to keep the door open, but also like stay, keep Russell Crowe like away,
Yeah.
and like cover himself too. So funny. I love the running joke of his alcoholism is hilarious to me.
Uh,
Like anytime, and there's one scene towards the end where like a guy offers him a drink and he's like, and then he's like, well, it's free, and then like he looks back. And there's another, oh my god, even funnier, whenever they go to the motel outside of the airport and they're talking to the bartender, and him and Russell Crowe's like, we got to go up there and save her. And then the bartender's like, no, guys, you don't want to mess with him. Just stay down here, have a couple beers on me. And Ryan Gosling's like, yeah, yeah, this guy knows what he's talking about. Let's do that. And his character has like so many just like pinpointing like comedic elements like that.
hmm
When he gets just completely wasted at that mansion party and ends up just falling off the balcony, like his physical comedy is so good in this movie.
Oh my gosh. Yeah. The majority of those scenes I definitely want to like dive deeper into, like the ones you brought up. And I think out of everything you brought up, it's like they all fit really well into the notes as far as like kind of the things I was able to pull out of the performance. I kind of saw, I would say, two like acting techniques consistently being used that kind of accounted for the majority of what made it like really funny. And the first one is just timing, which is very obvious and in general, right? We'll like break into like what specifically about his timing was funny. But the other one, which actually everybody in the movie employed really well, but we're focusing on this performance and it was used really well in this performance as well, is what I'm calling sincerity. So it's kind of like the idea of like they'll say the most ridiculous, stupid things, but they're not trying to be funny. They believe what they're saying. Man, there's a lot of examples. Okay, one example that comes really funny. One example that comes to mind is actually very early on, when his character is asking around at a bar and he's trying to tip him off with like an origami folded piece of money, right? That part was really funny to me because it's a hilarious like bit, but I think his character, I feel like that was a genuine attempt to be fun. It's a there's layers to this, right? But basically, I feel like what's his character's name? Like March?
Yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
Mark.
So March was trying to be funny enough to like get information out of this guy, and he miserably failed at that because the guy just thought he was ridiculous and brushed him off. So, like basically, the character was being sincere, and so the performance Ryan Gosling gave was a character genuinely trying to do something. You know what I'm trying to say, like with this as far as sincerity goes.
Yeah, the characters are so bought into the ridiculousness of the story that it makes it so much more funny. This kind of comedy that you're talking about is
Mm,
something that I don't know, it doesn't seem like we see as much right now. Where like other types of, and tell me if this is way off, but like Monty Python and the Holy Grail,
hmm
like those characters, like everything that happens in that movie is like they react very sincerely to it, and they don't question the ridiculousness of it. Like there's no actual fourth wall breaking. I mean, they do it
Yeah, yeah,
comedically, but and that's what I see in Ryan Gosling's character a lot in this movie, like what you're saying, or when he wraps like the rag around the front of his fist and punches through the glass, but
Uh,
ends up cutting like the bottom of his wrist. Yeah, he has so many stupid tactics, but his character is so bought into it anyway that it's believable. It's insane.
yeah, okay, so I like you drawing the parallel with Monty Python because that basically kind of gives us a name for it where it's basically like just a farce, where all of the comedy is from the ridiculousness of the writing of the situations that are happening, but the characters themselves do not see it as like they're in a comedy and they're trying to be funny. They really believe what is happening and they're really genuinely reacting to what's happening as if they were a human being in this situation.
Yeah.
So they're acting sincerely, um, but it's all ridiculous and it's just really funny. So like it's kind of nuanced, but like I think everyone did that. They all said lines that were just really, really funny, but the characters when they delivered it were completely serious and believed what they were saying. And so that was one technique that was on display from everybody.
I love the sincerity towards the end of the movie whenever that receptionist is like holding them hostage in the hotel room and his character, March is just like, this isn't you, you're not a murderer.
Uh,
And Russell Crowe's like, nah, she's killed three people, like, or whenever they're talking about the suitcase wasn't actually full of money, and obviously she did that on purpose, but Ryan Gosling's like, there's some foul play going on here. And we're trying to figure it out. It's not you.
like what's to like drill down in like those specific moments is like there's this level of well, I mean, he's intoxicated the majority of the movie, so like this is where a lot of it comes from, but there's a lot of like delusion and just stupidity that is really is really funny, but like the I guess like what kind of ties a little bit of what we're talking about together is this idea of the character is really really trying the whole time to be like some like a great detective or to like do the right thing or to be courageous or heroic or smart and composed and even like the dominant male presence in any scene, right? And so I guess what makes it so funny is like that sincerity is like this person's genuine attempts to be smart or powerful or whatever, and they all just really missing the mark, feeble attempts, and that's what makes it funny. But what adds to it being funny is that he fully believes what he's doing is like going to work when he tries, and he just like keeps trying over and over again.
Oh yeah, I mean, completely agree with that. And I think another example of that is when they have that note on the cow, and Russell Crowe thinks it's a flight number, and they just had some tiff about how he was stupid, and he's like,
Yep.
it's not a flight number, it's this building, it's the date, it's written the European way. And they're like, oh my god, like that actually makes a lot of sense. And they roll up and like the building's been destroyed for years. But yeah, he's very confident. I mean, he really believes, or at least tries to really show his worth and be like the most competent detective ever. And
Yeah.
he's just really dumb.
It's actually really funny when the two main characters meet for the first time when he goes and beats him up at his house, right? The so Russell Crowe's character basically is like an he sees himself as kind of like an unlicensed kind of bit of a detective, right? Or he's kind of always wanted to be a detective. You kind of get those vibes. And when he goes to beat up Ryan Gosling's character, who is a detective, he's very surprised by the way he acts because he gives up his client right away and he's super weak and
He pulls the gun out of the cookie jar,
yeah,
right? And Russell Crowe just throws it out. Russell Crowe doesn't think that he's good enough to be a detective. He has this kind of idea of what a PI looks like, lives like, acts like. And so once he's beating up Ryan Gosling and he's being a total wimp and giving out client names just so he will stop, towering over him, I think that's when he has a little bit of change of heart and can see that he is more than just a tough guy for
yeah,
hire, because his intentions are there no matter what his past is like. And I wish they went a little more into it in the movie, but the diner incident when he like saved all those people, I think that ties into what he was doing prior to meeting Ryan Gosling's character. He was still helping out, teenage girls by beating up their predators, and then seeing how obtainable it actually is because and the PIs aren't as prestigious as he might have thought before.
Yeah. Let's see. Let's like talk about timing a little bit. Something that was really funny is like in the beginning of the movie, the timing of the performance was very how do I say it? It was like kind of quick but like stuttered. Like that one scene where he's doing an intake with the one lady whose husband had died, but she, doesn't know where he is, like thinks he's out there somewhere, right? And when you're seeing him look over and the urn or whatever that has her husband, right? And like he does the double take and like how quickly he figures out how he can scam her is is funny because it happens pretty much as fast as the viewer's interpretation of the situation is happening, where we see that and we're like, oh, she's crazy, and then he's like, so you kind of see on his face like, oh, she's crazy, and then he just quickly asks the question like, how long has he been missing, like feeding into the delusion so that he can get money from her. It all happens quickly enough to where maybe we had no idea that he was going to do that. And I feel like if it was held too long, that thought may have came to our mind like, wait, is he going to scam her or something? But it all happened so fast that it was it was delivered like as a punchline as opposed to like us figuring it out beforehand.
Right. Yeah. The setup to the punchline is in his reaction.
Yep. What's some other moments of like maybe comedic timing you noticed in the movie?
I think how quickly he responds to people with his next line, almost to where it's like his character isn't even thinking before he talks, I think is done really well because I mean, he speaks very quickly after Russell Crowe finishes a line or after his daughter says something, but he comes across still with that like kind of false confidence.
Yep.
And so that's kind of some timing there. One we haven't talked about that's a visual thing, but still funny in the way he delivers the line is when the congresswoman or the senator, whatever she is, she's asking how much, to pay. And we see she starts writing a check, and he's over there, like, oh, we do a lot of, hard work. We're pretty prestigious or whatever. And he's like, oh, and it's like half the amount that she's writing
Yeah,
down.
yeah, yeah.
And I just think that kind of goes into the timing of it all.
Yeah,
But
where he kind of
he's
just
just
jumps
very
the gun.
quick. Yeah, yeah, he's very quick with his lines and quick to jump to conclusions. And I mean, I mentioned his face earlier. Oh, what you got?
Okay, the way you're framing it now is perfect because that makes me think of the line where they're at the burnt down house and they're talking to the kid who's wanting to show him his dick. And so what's really funny is like basically the ending of that scene, he's like, oh, I can't remember the exact line, but his character is saying like nobody wants to see your dick, like, and he keeps going and then he goes like, what am I even saying, and moves on, right? And I think that illustrates how he's like he's just talking. He just like it's habitual for him to just like keep the conversation going or trying to like dominate the conversation presence. And then he's like, "This is pointless. Why am I even talking?" Like
Yep,
that perfectly
yep.
shows.
Another thing with timing and delivery is how just with his voice and with like his gestures, he shows just how lazy his character is. One scene that comes to mind is when they're looking for Amelia in the group of protesters, and Russell Crowe just keeps saying, where's she at? And he's like, she's in there, Amelia. And then he's like, he keeps trying to leave,
Yeah.
and Russell Crowe's just like, no, he's like, she's not in there. And then you just see like in his body language and like his voice that he just does not want to be there. Like he's taking that as like he's done his job for the day. He found the protest that she's supposedly is at. And he's just trying to leave without even verifying that she's there.
Yeah. Kind of similar is the party scene where he's getting wasted and he's like he's supposed to be asking around to find out more information, right? And he's like he goes up to like one group of girls or whatever and is asking them questions, but he's so intoxicated he's like mixing up all of his words. My favorite part in that little scene is he's like saying something about like if you ever hear, and then he gets distracted by the mermaid and he says the call of the wild and they go what, and the way he goes, just kidding, is really funny because that's like kind of one of the only times in that little scene where he's coherent. And I think it's because the phrase just kidding is like a filler word for him because he's so used to being an asshole and getting bad reactions from people that he has to constantly be saying just kidding. So it like rolls off the tongue for him. And like the delivery is different from the more him trying to be confident, right? Like he just quickly says just kidding to try and like circumvent what he thinks is a bad situation and then just keeps talking. It's kind of like micro backstory to like his character.
No, yeah, that's a good catch. I didn't catch that. So for anyone trying to kind of master this type of, what would you call it? I just had the word for it. Not arrogant, ignorant, kind of like
Mhm.
ignorant, kind of stupid but confident kind of character that would have these kind of lines. What kind of preparation do you think it takes when it comes to like learning the script and learning about the character?
It's a good question. Okay, so we're kind of going for I like ignorant, somewhat oblivious, self-absorbed. I feel like self-absorbed might
I
contain
I would say so.
yeah, that might contain a little bit of all the things we're talking about. You'll be a little more oblivious, you'll be a little more arrogant or ignorant, all the different. Okay. So, what's really funny is it's almost to get into like this headspace for acting is kind of like what you're trying to avoid as an actor for like other ways of acting. It's like kind of similar. So like in the previous episode what we were talking about is how if you're thinking about what's your next line or if you're thinking about how you're gonna like exit off the stage while you're acting, you're not gonna be able to give a very good performance, right? And it's actually taking, I think, kind of that similar concept where if you're trying to play a self-absorbed character, you're actually trying to have your thoughts in the moment be about your own character and not entirely and intentionally ignoring your scene partners, but giving off the fact that like your character is ignoring the people they're talking to. So in a way, you're kind of ignoring your scene partners, but your character is doing it. You know, you're not doing it because you don't know your lines or because you don't know your blocking. Your character's doing it because they're thinking about themselves or they're thinking about the next thing they're going to say.
I think it's important also whenever you're preparing to act like that you are like in the beginning very aware of what's going on around you in the scene because it's almost I think it's almost more difficult to act like you're not paying attention. Because like whenever I'm like reacting, it's very natural for me. So if I'm trying to get in a headspace of being self-absorbed and not knowing what's going on, I have to like intentionally not react because I've been learning this script and this story. Um, like I would need to know what's happening and know how to not react to it.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think that's harder because, like, I've definitely like zoned out on stage before and just known that this is like a sad scene. I just have to act sad. Or like I hear a certain line, I'm like, oh yeah, I need to act sad right now. Or oh, I need to act surprised all of a sudden because I just heard a line. But if you're trying to be super self-absorbed and just disregarding everyone else, like you can't do that. You do have to know what's going on enough to know how to not react.
Yeah. Um,
So like in the beginning stages is what I was saying. And then you can get to that part where it fully comes out that you are self-absorbed and you're acting like you're ignoring everyone. And it's easier then.
mhm. Okay, so you're saying in the beginning stages, you kind of just have to go about the acting process normally to get a feel for how the scenes actually flow, and then you
Yeah,
can
so
double down.
yeah, so you know like okay, so everyone else in the scene is acting shocked and surprised, but I'm not paying attention, so I can't just kind of give into those feelings that are going on stage or around with the cast. I have to you almost have to like make up thoughts for your character to separate yourself. That's what I would do.
Oh, okay, gotcha, gotcha. Yeah, that makes yeah. Again, like a distinction there is like when it comes to like stage acting versus like film acting, where it may be possible. I haven't done a whole lot of film acting, obviously, but since you're kind of taking it scene by scene and you have multiple chances to go through things, it might be easier to play that self-absorbed, like kind of just naturally in the moment. But when it comes to like, you know, doing a play or some stage production, right? you're going to be doing it so many times that you have to go about it a different way. Um, and that's kind of more what we were going into is like kind of how you would do this for a performance that you're going to rehearse a lot and that you're going to be preforming a bunch of times, like in a row. So that's cool.
Now, for these, very specific comedic roles, for them to come across as well as Ryan Gosling does it, you have to stay sharp with what's going on, and how your character would react, especially if it's, I mean, something just super ridiculous going on, or your character is so
Hmm.
ridiculous. You have to stay sharp.
Like with like, like an immense amount of prep work or like knowing all the ins and outs of like what's going to happen and what everyone else is going to do.
Yeah, I
Definitely.
mean, I feel like some people may think that comedic acting is always easier than like dramatic acting because you're not trying to like you're not having to cry, or you're not having to, pretend like you're in love or whatever in a legit way. Um, and sometimes, yeah, comedic acting does come really naturally for some people, but it's this kind of performance that I think this is a tough performance to pull off the way that Ryan Gosling did. I mean, just his reaction to everything. I mean, his eyes, his eyebrows, I mean, he does several double takes, like we mentioned earlier. I mean, he is hyper aware of what's going on in the scene enough to where he can react that specific way.
Yeah, I fully agree with that. It's a good way to put it.